3, 2, 1. All systems ready.
As a kid of the 80s, I have played first-person shooters ever since Wolfenstein 3D popularized the genre back in 1992. We used to install the game on the school's computers and to take down Nazis whenever the teachers weren't looking at our screens. Since then, I have played all too many first-person shooters spanning all the big franchises, and in this video I will present to you my top 10 favorite first-person shooters of all time. The games will be spread throughout roughly 24 years, and I'm sure I will piss off a few people for leaving out some of the most popular franchises. But please don't be too mean to me in the comments. Anyways, here we go. Number 10 is Left 4 Dead 2. This game takes inspiration from every single zombie movie out there and turns it into a highly enjoyable cooperative shooter where you and up to 3 of your friends can enjoy the thrill of being attacked from all sides by hordes and hordes of zombies. And you do need friends to play this game properly, as attacking the zombies on your own, commando style, will not work. Either the sneaky hunter will jump out of the shadows and pacify you, or the long-tongued smoker will catch you with its tongue, or maybe the crazy fast monstrosity that is the charger will take you down. If you have a long-distance relationship with your girlfriend, this is a great game to play, as she will feel safe in your virtual arms as you protect her from the infected. I of course speak from experience, as I played it for half a year with my girlfriend while she was an exchange student, and we are still together. There really isn't a better co-op shooter out there, so grab a baseball bat and go to the mall to bash some zombies, Dawn of the Dead style. Number 9 is The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. I got into the game after watching the excellent cult classic Pitch Black, which introduced Vin Diesel as the badass Riddick. It is also Vin Diesel who did the voice work for the game and helped create one of the coolest video game characters ever.
You might want to be careful with that, Johns. You could hurt somebody.
The game starts out right after you have been thrown into the maximum security prison, Butcher Bay, and of course your main objective is to escape.
Riddick, Russ bids you welcome to Butcher Bay.
You have no weapons and no respect, and now your objective is to make a name for yourself by beating up other inmates and by performing different jobs. Strangely enough, you have to go deeper and deeper into the underground areas of the prison before you can make your way to the surface and escape. The game is not a straight up shooter, as large parts of the game make you sneak around making stealthy takedowns, but it does have its share of shooting too. The level design is excellent, the atmosphere is gritty, and the gameplay is varied. In many ways, the game reminds me of the sci-fi classic Fortress, which is also about escaping an underground maximum security prison. If you're a fan of Riddick or even the Arkham Batman games, you should check this one out.
It ain't the fall that gets you. It's a sudden stop at the bottom.
Number 8 is Quake III Arena. The first Quake game was my first experience playing online with my friends. I used to play on Quake World using my 56k modem under the name Manson, because Marilyn Manson was super hardcore back then. Come to think of it, it is crazy that you could play games back then with little latency on a 56k modem, when many games nowadays even lag on my 500 megabit connection. Maybe it is because of all the anti-cheat programs that you need to run when you play newer games. In the 90s there wasn't so much in terms of cheat protection. So sometimes I played with an all-black skin, making it super hard to spot me. Pretty immature. Anyways, the multiplayer-focused Quake III Arena came out in 1999, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. It wasn't until the re-release of the game as a browser version called Quake Live that I really got into the game. Quake 3 is among the fastest paced first-person shooters out there, and I love how skill-based it is with the rocket jumps and map control. It seems like most newer first-person shooters have been slowed down such that they can also be played on consoles with controllers. Also, most newer first-person shooters are focused on heroes with a unique playstyle like Overwatch or Quake Champions. I much prefer games where everyone compete on equal terms, and where you win because you're the best and not because you've learned a bunch of heroes by heart. I think what keeps a game like Quake 3 fresh is its skill-based gameplay, its fantastic map design, and its well-balanced weapons. It is incredible that the servers are still going strong after 20 years. Number 7 is Shadow Warrior. It is the little brother to the much beloved Duke Nukem 3D. I played both games like crazy, but I was just drawn more into the Eastern culture of Shadow Warrior and the hilariously immature protagonist, Lo Wang, who makes all too many Wang jokes.
That's no ordinary Wang.
And flirts with the cute manga girls.
Lo Wang soap you good.
In the early days of first-person shooters, the levels were filled with secrets. For this reason I ran around all the game's levels pushing the walls in the hope to reveal secret weapons and health packs. There was no YouTube back then to give away their locations. After finding the nuclear warheads in the different levels, I would invite my friends over for multiplayer matches and I would kick their butts, as I was the only one who knew where to find this totally overpowered weapon. Shadow Warrior has so many great and inventive weapons for multiplayer, like the rocket launcher with heat-seeking missiles. And my personal favorite, the sticky bomb.
Oh, sticky bomb like you.
The game was built on the build engine, which was used for a ton of my favorite games like Duke Nukem 3D, Redneck Rampage and Blood. And the engine is still going strong, as the latest game which uses the engine was released in 2018. It is also worth mentioning that the reboot of Shadow Warrior from 2013 is also totally worth checking out. Number 6 is Max Payne. I know I'm cheating a bit here, as Max Payne is really a third-person shooter, but it plays and feels more like a first-person shooter. When the game came out in 2001, it blew away all other shooters with its cool noir storytelling, with its realistic and gritty portrayal of the New York underworld, and of course with its bullet time shooting mechanics. The shooting mechanics just feel so damn good when you run around dealing damage with your dual-wielded Berettas. I also love how bullets interact differently depending on what type of surfaces you are hitting. This was revolutionary back then, but it is pretty standard in modern shooters. We follow Max Payne, who is out to revenge the death of his wife and child. The alcoholic and pill-popping Max first declares war on the Italian mafia and later on the evil pharmaceutical company Asia, as he fights his way through the New York underground, a mansion and a larger modern corporate building. The gun fu of Max Payne reminds me of old school John Woo movies like Hard Boiled, and of course of The Matrix. The game is not for the weak-minded, as it is so hard that you are guaranteed to die multiple times throughout the game. But this also means that when you finally complete the game, you will feel a real sense of accomplishment. Number 5 is Return to Castle of Wolfenstein. This game has an excellent single-player campaign, which feels very cinematic, taking inspiration from some of my favorite movies of all time, such as Where the Eagles Dare, Indiana Jones, and even some of the old James Bond movies. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, who is gathering intel on what the Nazi SS Paranormal Division is up to. The game starts out as a war shooter, a genre which was becoming hugely popular at the time. But as the story unravels, you also run into mummies and various results of Nazi experiments. The game has tons of cool enemy types, like the paratroopers and the elite spandex wearing Nazi chicks, which reminds me of the Ilsa exploitation movies.
Take them away and hang them up.
In the game's 8 to 9 hour running time, you never get bored, as the environments are constantly changing and you go from running and gunning to horror-driven tactical shooting. I just completed the game a few days ago, and I was surprised how well it holds up. The graphics still look decent, and it is super satisfying to take down the enemies in a bloody gory mess. But what really stands out is the atmosphere with a dark sounding soundtrack and where you can overhear conversations between the Nazis that really add to the story.
Now, let's try it again, shall we? Who do you work for?
For new school gamers, the game may kick your butt as it is from the golden age of first-person shooters where games used to be hard. Number 4 is Playerunknown's Battlegrounds. This buggy and poorly optimized game just felt so fresh when I started playing it in early access back in the first half of 2017. It was the first game in years that I couldn't get enough of. My friends and I even had several weekly dates where we would play Battlegrounds all night. The game is inspired by the excellent Japanese book and movie Battle Royale, where a group of kids are placed on an island and have to kill each other, as only one person gets to leave the island alive. To force people into confrontation, the playing field gets smaller and smaller as time goes by, until you cannot avoid meeting your enemies. The concept is so simple, yet the fact that there is no respawns put you into a state of constant alert and high adrenaline. The game isn't about killing the most people, but rather about making the right kills. And that could be just a single kill. When the game came out, it reminded me of the simpler times where games weren't all about skins, achievements, loot boxes and microtransactions. Unfortunately, since then, Battlegrounds has added all this crap to keep up with Fortnite. I'm just not a fan of games that reward you for playing more instead of for playing well. Number 3 is Doom 2. While Quake was my first online multiplayer game, Doom 2 was my first offline multiplayer game experience. Me and my brother were overly excited when we first got to hook up 2 computers to each other to play Doom against each other. Doom was light years ahead of all other first-person shooters when it came out, and it freaked many parents out with its demonic theme and its dark-sounding soundtrack. The game just has this amazing flow to it, as you're taking down monsters with your shotgun in a bloody gory mess. The game was from the era where you played first-person shooters only using your keyboard, and you would use the arrow keys with your right hand, and you would open doors, jump, shoot, strafe and change weapons with your left hand. And believe it or not, it actually worked surprisingly well. Doom is still living large and got a second revival after its source code was released back in 1997. This has resulted in tons and tons of mods, of which my favorite is Brutal Doom. The controls have been made modern and the level of blood has been turned up a few notches. This is the way to experience Doom if you're a newcomer. Number 2 is Far Cry. The game was released in 2004, which in my opinion is the best year for first-person shooters ever. The same year fantastic games like Doom 3, Half-Life 2, Unreal Tournament 2004, Battlefield Vietnam, and The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay were also released. But in my opinion, Far Cry was the best game of the bunch. I know that many will disagree with me on this, and kick my butt for not giving Half-Life 2 a spot on the list. I did like Half-Life 2, but I also found it a tad boring, especially the hour-long sections where you had to get gas for your boat. Far Cry is about Jack Carver, an ex-Special Forces soldier who ends up on a group of mysterious tropical islands where something shady is going on. The researcher Doyle convinces him over a walkie-talkie to uncover the secrets of the islands.
Hello? Are you there? Pick up the radio if you can hear this. I know you're there.
Here Jack gets into several encounters with mercenaries and finds out that the evil creature inhabiting the islands is weaponizing genetic engineering. This means that in the last half of the game, you fight these extremely strong beasts that are called Trigens. Many people gave up on completing the game as these beasts are numerous and could kill you in a single blow. I, however, really enjoy the whole unveiling of the story, and I like hard games. To me, Far Cry felt like playing an 80s action movie with its macho characters, its corny dialogue and its stereotypic villains. The game was stunningly beautiful for its time, and the creators knew this, so they started you out in a cave, and then when you left it for the first time, the sight just blew your mind. The game has a great variety in locations, and the lighting of the game is just excellent. I much prefer the semi-linear story of the game to the open world sequels. The reason I prefer semi-linear stories to open world stories is that most open world games have a tendency to drag you across the same locations again and again and again, and also usually the locations are much more boring. Also, in many open world games you have to grind through enemies to upgrade your abilities. That being said, I quite enjoyed Far Cry 3, especially the first half. Before we get to the first place, I have two quick honorable mentions. Battlefield Vietnam was my favorite of the Battlefield games, as the maps had the perfect size and all the overly complicated game features of newer Battlefield games hadn't arrived yet. And the second game is Mirror's Edge, which has you play as a runner fighting a totalitarian state. I just really enjoyed the flow and the look of the game. However, stay away from the buggy sequel. Now we have finally arrived at number 1, and that is of course Unreal Tournament. This multiplayer focused tournament shooter is just excellent. The game has crazy much content that keeps it fresh for years and years. And though the game was released in 1999, the servers are still up if you're in the need for an online match. In the year 2291, deathmatches have been legalized and have become hugely popular, and of course you are one of the competitors. In the single player mode, you are up against bots in various game formats, such as deathmatch, capture the flag, domination, and a task-driven game mode, Assault, where your team has to solve a number of tasks faster than the competitor team. And the bots in Unreal Tournament are quite good, and they were amazing for their time. Just like in Quake, all the weapons in Unreal Tournament are useful, and my favorite is the flag cannon, which is some sort of futuristic shotgun. The reason I prefer this game to Quake is that it is much more focused on fun with all the mods, game modes and mutators. All the maps are much more diverse and inventive, with maps such as the infamous Facing Worlds, the castle map Barricade, and the anti-gravity map Morpheus. If you get bored of a map, then just use some mutators. You can turn any map into an anti-gravity map. You can handicap overly good players in the Fat Boy mode, where players with many kills get really fat. And you can play with the hugely popular Insta-Gib mutator, where everyone have the same weapon, which kills you in a single shot. The game also had crazy many fan-made mods that extended the game's lifetime, such as the Space Fighters, the Shark map, the Tornado map, and my favorite mod, Tactical Ops, which was the main competitor to Counter-Strike at the time. I actually liked Tactical Ops better at the time because the gameplay was much more arcadey and because the maps were way cooler. But looking back, Tactical Ops has aged horribly. Though the sequel to Unreal Tournament, called Unreal Tournament 2004, upped the game in many ways and even had a Matrix mod, my love will always stay the strongest for the one that started it all. And when it comes to Unreal Tournament 3, it took all the speed out of the game and pretty much killed the franchise. That is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, though it's a bit off topic for my channel. Let me know in the comments if you liked it or if you think that I should stick with the movie reviews. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you later.